Welcome to the Pulse podcast, where we discuss the latest trends in workplace technology and healthcare equipment, from artificial intelligence to business transformation. I'm Aileen BeVard, a U.S. sales manager for the workplace segment. And today we're diving into what's top of mind for OE dealers across the U.S. We are honored with the presence of our guest today. Welcome, CJ Cannata, President and CEO of the Cannata Report, which is the leading source for dealer channel intelligence. CJ and his team recently conducted a nationwide survey of office technology dealers, and today we're going to unpack those results and talk about what they mean for the future of this industry. So CJ, thank you for joining us.
Aileen, thank you so much for having me. It's really a privilege and an honor, and I'm thrilled to be here.
Well, to kick it off, why don't you give us a little bit of background of kind of how this survey came to be, and what your goals are as you run it annually?
Sure, absolutely. 41 years ago, our founder, Frank G. Cannata, introduced this survey as a way to give dealers a voice. And in doing so, we were able to collect a tremendous amount of data, um, come up with insights, and leverage that data and insights across multiple platforms, vehicles, and opportunities for communication. The Cannata Report, custom actionable intelligence projects for vendors who want to learn more about dealers and their competition and how they're doing against their competition. And it also helps inform us in terms of future content. What are dealers interested in?
Well, that's great background. We wanted to talk a little bit about this year's results. So generally speaking, just to kind of start us off, what trends or story have you kind of seen in those results? And what does that tell us about what dealers are thinking about for the future? And do you feel, sorry, I know it's like three questions, but do you also feel like there's been a shift in mindset compared to previous years with all the change that's gone on?
Well, I'll start with the last and go backwards. I feel like um, it's not so much that I see a dramatic overall shift. It's more like an evolution and fluctuation, particularly over the last 3 to 5 years since COVID, and we'll get into some specifics of that.
Mhm.
But going back more towards the beginning of your question, um, what is abundantly clear at this inflection point or crossroads in the industry, that everybody is at a point, whether you're a smaller dealer or a dealer that is very, very much focused on the core business and is struggling to determine, how do I become more profitable? Because it's all about profitability, and achieving profitability and sustainability, and we'll get into that. We'll get
Sure.
into more of that. Or you're on the other side of the spectrum and you've got it figured out. You're doing well in terms of revenue and profitability. You're pleased with where you are and where you're going. You have a plan. Everyone is on the same page in terms of the core business is not growing. I don't want to be disarming or disillusioning that print is not the 8.5 by 11 document, as I personally always refer to it. The printing and copying of that is not dying, but there is
Sure.
no growth, and it is. I don't know what the right word, comforting isn't the right, but it's nice to see, for lack of a more descriptive term, that over the past couple years, everyone is aligned in that thinking. At least publicly, everyone's saying that it's all about stealing share. So
Yes.
that's really the overall point. That is, it's nice, for lack of a better word, to see that everyone is on the same page in terms of the realities of where the industry is, whether they are over here, like I said earlier, or over here with regard to the evolution of their business model.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we're seeing a lot of that same stuff on our end too. Some of the same conversations that dealers are having. I can't speak for other financing partners, but I know that DLL has had the same conversations about the fact that the way to kind of grow profitability in this business is to grow your market share right now, not necessarily to, grow the industry as a whole, if that makes sense.
Yes,
Um,
very much so.
all that being said, how do you think dealers' mind shifts or minds are going to shift, I guess, over the next year compared to maybe what they were doing pre-COVID?
I think, again, I don't think it's so much of a shift, but a further exponential acceleration. And in terms of what we're seeing in our survey and overall, they all dovetail together. So I think security is a big focus and also a great way for dealers to introduce a conversation because security is on everyone's mind. I think also you're going to see, I'm seeing in our survey more and more competition in the document management space. Document management represented less than 2% of revenue of all diversification. IT and production print were much higher, and we can certainly go back to that. But document management is certainly one of the top 5 key diversification areas for dealers. And I think you're going to see, as I'm seeing in my survey, while DocuWare is dominant, and I don't see DocuWare declining in any major way, or they're going to start doing poorly. But what I am seeing is Square 9 is accelerating. Other technologies like ACDI ScanShare are accelerating. So there are other technologies in the market, which makes sense because document management, while lower in terms of the revenue it represented for dealers in our surveys compared to other areas of diversification or areas where you can achieve higher revenue, more importantly, profitability and sustainability, being production printing and IT services. And I'm going to come back to that because those are two big things in and of themselves. So document management. One specific production printing and industrial printing trend that I really want to point out, as I feel it's unlikely many others will talk about this, is textile printing. Dovetailing with why I'm saying what I'm saying, that dealers should keep an eye out for this technology, which kind of seems like, wow, printing on fabric, that seems really, really removed. It's coming. It is coming. We're doing our own research on it in and of ourselves as a brand that has always championed and believed in production and industrial printing.
During that whole conversation, you brought up the word diversification. I'm glad that you did, and some other areas. You and I spoke about this briefly before, but let's talk about diversification because I know that for me here, it's been a huge topic because, as we said earlier, although print is not going away, it has become kind of stagnant in terms of like what market share there is out there. And so there is a need to kind of diversify a little bit, right? For dealers, for financing partners, for the whole industry. And I think you and I agree, it's a little bit of a word that almost rubs people the wrong way now because it feels like everywhere you turn, people are saying, well, what are you doing differently? And a lot of dealers who have been in the business for years are like, we don't want to do things differently. Like, this is what works. This is an extremely profitable business. It's a lot to get into, other areas and kind of try to stretch beyond what people are used to. But what does diversification, do you think, really mean for dealers today? Like, what is the value in something like that? And why do you think that it needs to be a defining piece of strategy moving into 26?
Sure. No, that's a great point. Just talking about diversification and some of the ways and some of the comments that you made and the way that you framed your question. Yeah, it is becoming a word that I certainly feel what you're saying in terms of dealers are getting tired of hearing it. I think we all just need to remember using that word in the proper context, which is really simple. And it was within what you said. We're not just diversifying just for the sake of diversifying because we want to, and because we want to do all these different things just for the sake of doing them. Diversification is a strategy specifically to help dealers achieve success in the 2 top areas that they're thinking about. Achieving greater profitability in the declining market with declining hardware declines and aftermarket values and the introduction of tariffs last year, which we both know shook everybody up and was so I think we need to remember that there's a reason we're talking about diversification, and what dealers do love to talk about, or what's top of mind again is profitability and sustainability. Diversification is one of a very key area subject that dealers need to think about in order to achieve that. And one of the top areas, but it is one of others, attracting the right talent. Whether it's for your core business or for new areas that you're getting into is a challenge and something that dealers are struggling with. And you have to have the right people to operate a business that will help you sustain and or enhance your profitability and sustainability. So
Right.
there's other ones. You have to market your business appropriately to attract the right talent and the right customers on the opposite side. So, and we could go on and on and on, but the point is diversification is a key strategy in helping dealers address their key pain point, which is profitability and pain points, profitability and sustainability.
Absolutely. I totally agree. That kind of leads me to another topic. And I'd be remiss if I didn't touch on it. So let's talk about financing partners. Your
Sure.
survey this year actually showed that financing partners like DLL saw their ratings rise year over year for the past couple of years. So, why do you think, I guess, that those ratings are going up? And how are dealers viewing their financial partners a little bit differently now than maybe they were before?
I think what that tells me is that overall finance partners overall as a whole
Mhm.
are being better partners. They care about the dealer's business, how every dealer's business, as you and I both know, Aileen, is different to some degree.
Mhm.
Um, they want to partner. They're coming up with new ways to finance a lot of different areas that are being discussed and acted upon in terms of dealers getting into the different offering different or adding and or offering different products and services into and from their portfolio. So responsiveness, rates, all of that. But I think the key is finance partners overall have been becoming, and I've seen this in our survey, but also in talking to dealers and in working with various partners finance partners with other partners at the same time. It's that willingness to become more flexible, willingness to look into how do we finance software or how do we finance an intangible service? I see finance companies really, really working towards and introducing models to address how they can expand upon the products and services that they finance. Again, going into some areas that maybe 10 years ago, software, we're not getting involved with that. That's not a hard good. There's no return on that. So I'm seeing a lot of this willingness to partner and be flexible. And specifically with regard to DLL, what was great to see is that a lot of the comments that your dealers made, and by your dealers, I mean dealers who identify DLL as their primary leasing partner in our 2025 annual dealer survey, our comments are over 85% of of your dealers made comments that are commensurate with the points that you and I are both talking about. Your rate, I actually pulled 5 out of my survey that are slightly different, but
Mhm.
hopefully will serve as proof points. Competitive rates, and I might have to competitive rate, read this. Competitive rates and willing to be flexible. Funding process is quick. They work to maintain a partnership relationship versus a vendor relationship. Responsive people who support our business. And responsive, and I love this word, adaptable. So, there are some proof points specifically with regard to DLL and some of the changes that we're seeing and I'm seeing overall in terms of how leasing partners are interacting, engaging with, evolving, and changing the way they do business with dealers.
I definitely appreciate you sharing that insight. Well, thank you so much. I think this was super insightful, very helpful. So we really appreciate your time and your insights today. Before we go, for any listeners out there, if you want to learn more about the Cannata Report's annual dealer survey, you can visit www.thecannatareport.com. We're going to go ahead and include a link in the show notes. And the next survey is launching pretty soon, right, CJ?
Yes, the survey is slated to launch in early March, the
Okay,
2026 annual
awesome.
dealer survey, our 41st annual dealer survey.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a real pleasure.
Of course. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Pulse Podcast. Coming up next, we will continue our conversation with CJ in part 2, so stay tuned. I'm Aileen BeVard, a U.S. sales manager for the workplace segment at DLL. Thanks again for joining us.
This podcast is brought to you by DLL Group. All rights reserved. This podcast is for general information purposes only and should not be used as a substitute for professional advice. The opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the participants. Nothing herein should be construed as legal, tax, financial, accounting, or investment advice. Please visit www.dllgroup.com/aboutus for further details.